Today on Fintech Talk, a sneak preview of Money 2020 coming up in Vegas with the man shaping the fintech conversation, Zach Anderson Pettet. We'll cover startup momentum and content streams, the real fintech trends heading in, the crypto stablecoins resurgence, from the policy moves like the Genius Act to industry adoptions, and last but not least, how AI agents are changing events themselves. Let's go. Welcome, Fintech Talkers. This is Patty. My guest today is Zach Anderson Pettet, VP Fintech Strategy at Money 2020, the premier stage for payments, banking, crypto, and financial innovation. Zach curates the storyline, steers the content, keeps a finger on the pulse of what's real versus what's hype. Zach, it's great to have you.
Patty, it's great to be here, my friend. Thank you for that kind introduction. I don't know if I'm exactly shaping the conversation to that degree or, having that kind of impact, but we're doing what we can, and I appreciate it. It's good to be here. It's good to see you.
That's one of the traits of Zach. He's humble and modest. But before we kind of get into the nitty-gritties of Money 20, for anyone who's new to Money 20, I don't know whether anyone in the industry is really new, but just in case, give us a quick version of what you do and how the content engine works.
Yeah, so Money 2020 itself, right, is the global fintech platform. From our show coming up in Vegas all the way to Bangkok to Amsterdam, all the way to the show that it was most recent in Riyadh. We're at this point having conversations that I never thought I would find myself in on a global level, I will say, and it's pretty exciting. But it started way smaller than that, right? It started as a payments conference a little over 10 years ago now, and has grown into, like I said, the fintech platform. But that can mean so many things. Really, at the end of the day, it is, I would say, the Fintech Family Reunion is one thing. It's, where you see all the people that you don't get to see all that often, and a lot of hugs in the hallways and all that kind of stuff. All the way to, starting net new conversations. A lot of business gets done in terms of just networking, in terms of even, just serendipitous walking down hey, do you know this person? That sort of thing. Just the network effect of Money 2020 itself happens. And deals get closed, right? Because of the kind of length of, and having worked in banking myself and on the other side selling into banks, knowing the length of that sales cycle. Sometimes you'll start a conversation, at Money 2020 one year, and you'll actually close and sign that deal the next. And I've had that happen personally and heard that story so many times, which maybe speaks to us figuring out a way to shorten that sales cycle even a little bit more. But that's a separate conversation, I think. So there's that, all the way into what you're asking about specifically, which is the content. And I think the content at Money 2020, the way that we think about it and kind of how it comes together is very story oriented, right? It's easy to, or not easy, it requires a network and it requires a lot of different things, but it's pretty easy to just throw some panels together at the end of the day, right? And there's a lot of events in the world. Where we start is as a mirror of the industry itself. And as the industry is changing faster and faster and becoming more and more dynamic, that mirror is, developing some new layers that we didn't see coming, right? With AI, blockchain's journey from, Satoshi all the way up to, Jamie Dimon and a set of other, gigantic banks moving billions of dollars through tokenized platforms that they've built themselves, right? Like the journey of all this has been unbelievable over the last 10, 15 years. So I think through that, Money 2020 has acted as a mirror, and when we can, tried to push the industry forward. The reason that I joined personally, I was, 10 years of fintech banking nerd that basically just got so angry at the industry in college, figuring out that you're fiduciary broker dealer, like you can just kind of sell whatever to whoever in a lot of cases. And I found that to be wildly unethical. Just got so frustrated by it. And I figured out after attending a few Money 2020s that what happened on the stages was really forming the next year of the industry. And I don't know how much of a Big Fat Greek Wedding fan you are. This is kind of a random reference, but I refer to us as kind of the the neck that turns the head, right? So there's a quote in Big Fat Greek Wedding about how the matriarch of the Greek family is not maybe the decision maker based on, history and just kind of how that works, but is definitely turning things in the direction of the decision that should be made, or else there just might be some problems, right? And it's not like we have the ability to enforce any of that, but trying to kind of, be pushing forward the right conversations, be pushing forward the right technologies, even in terms of just, one example that's undercover, I think at this point. I don't know if I think it's an announcement actually happening at the show, but I will allude to it. And hopefully Tina, our PR person, doesn't come off camera and say, no, Zach, you can't say that. But even this year, one of the announcements is going to be about solving the problem of kind of cashlessness and homelessness, right? As the world turns, how much cash are you carrying in your pocket on a daily basis? It's decreasing constantly. Is homelessness decreasing? Is the need to get these things aren't matching up, and we're not having solutions to a lot of the more pressing human problems. So we're, at the same time that we're having conversations about how this gigantic bank is doing something with this blockchain and, going down that rabbit hole with that AI agent, we're also talking about how, we can try and solve in a digital way a little bit of, even just a human kind of homelessness giving problem. Yeah. So it goes a lot of directions, and I could give you so much more after 4 or 5 years of doing this, but it comes from the heart, and everyone on our team is, on the content side, I would say, deeply nerdy and deeply passionate about this subject, and I think that's what makes the content really special.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I've attended like 10 plus Money 2020s now. I was talking before we started with Tina that the first one was, I think, 2013, and I wholeheartedly agree with what you said, and kind of to paraphrase, you're sculpting the future. I mean, there's one thing about just curating what's happening and
right.
and presenting, but you're influencing the trajectory and in many ways, and that's kind of what you said. And I use a kind of phrase, and there's that popular cliche about what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But what I say is what happens in Money 2020 Vegas actually echoes around the world the next year.
It's the inherent opposite, actually. I've never thought about that. With team, clip this. We're going to use that as actually genius marketing that we're going to pull on at some point. It's very true, and that's I never thought I would work in events. And when I got the call from Money 2020 and Scarlett Sieber, our chief strategy officer, I kind of thought, events? Like, I build, like, I don't know. I do startup things. I build things. This feels that's not normal. And then flew to New York, met the team, and just in 30 seconds, like, it was like, this is it. And, I think even just if I were to even just leave today, I think the impact that the content has had, even over the last 4 years that I've been a part of it, has left a positive legacy, I think.
Yeah. And you said a lot in that introduction, so let's unpack. So obviously we talked about the mirror and sculpting the future part. Mm-hmm. And you started with that global angle, right? So yeah, I have only attended Vegas, but I know now Riyadh and KSA was the most recent, but you had in Europe and Amsterdam and even in China, and so it's growing. And fintech in general is more of a global phenomenon, not just now, but it's been a global phenomenon, and maybe has more growth globally than, say, in the United States. So talk about that angle, maybe just elaborate. I know the Riyadh was the last show, but where are the new kind of arenas and theaters?
I think the most interesting conversation is really at kind of the intersection of all of it. So I wasn't personally at the Riyadh show, but I think I have at least 10 Money 2020s, 12, 13. I'm not sure how many now I've attended as an actual employee. Before that in Vegas, I think I did 3 or 4. So what like I really would say that our US show is our global show, right? We talk a lot about the global South. We don't just focus on North America. We talk about Asia. We talk about Europe. It is kind of the central hub to that spoke to a group of spokes, I guess, conversationally. But the world, I think, is shifting in a direction where if we talk about these things too much in isolation, or we become too focused on one of these geographies, that we're gonna miss something gigantic, right? I think there's some, you can compare and contrast how open banking is functioning in Europe versus how it's their regulatory scheme is very different than ours. Ours is, well, as far as open banking, kind of non-existent or questionable right now, gone. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the exact correct phrasing of that is, but Rule 1033 is not what it maybe once was. And open banking itself is, something that is in a very different place here than it is in Europe, but also it's at a very different place in Asia. And also these are all being leveraged for very different use cases across all these different geographies, right? So if you consider yourself an open banking expert in one place, the likelihood that 100% of what's going on across all of open banking in the world, I just don't believe you, right? So I think there's a lot of compare, a lot of contrast, but the global lines, I think, are graying, or especially with blockchain kind of coming back, or what a DeFi, whatever proper buzzword you want to pick, this real acceptance of stablecoins and this acceptance of blockchain oriented token technologies to move money across borders and to move money in general, move value in general. I think at the end of the day, these are just continuous conversations. It's kind of a flywheel more than it is or the Bangkok show is so different than the Amsterdam, there's different vibes. They're in different buildings, but at the end of the day, we're talking a lot about the US at the Bangkok show, right? And we're talking a lot about Europe when we're in the US. It's just that flywheel, I think, is part of what makes it really special. And it's rare, but occasionally we'll even have a speaker jump, and kind of continue a story from one place to the next, because it's, that moment, right? And that's a rare thing that I think we have in spades. But I think we do what we can to take a step back and really look at the 50,000 foot, what is really impacting all of this, not just what is the thing here, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, and that's true. And especially in the current geopolitical climate, and we don't have to get there, but with the tariffs and the Trump 2.0, I think it even makes it more because the globe is changing, I guess, in some ways. I mean, not the merits of the politics, but just that it is a change. So I think it impacts significantly. No, sorry, you had a thought there.
No, just agreeing. I think whatever your opinion on reality is, it is reality, right? We can all have good thoughts or bad thoughts about any administration, but it is what we are dealing with, and it is where we are. And I think that is, it's more important to take that into account right now than maybe ever, especially in fintech. This is probably the moment that if you are not paying attention and you let stablecoins pass you by as a community bank in the US, or you let, the agentic evolution of AI pass you by as a commerce company, this could be a, extinction level event for a lot of companies in the next 20 years or so if they miss this wave. And this wave is probably only about 5 years long, or else you're going to be having a hard time from there.
Yeah. No, and that's great. Actually, it's interesting times. A lot of people say fintech's kind of maturing, but I think there are some new things coming. And maybe let's pivot on to the show that's coming up in just over a week.
Yeah.
and talk. And I know you gave us a sneak preview about that financial inclusion, the homelessness and cashlessness. I want to get to that, but one of the things I personally like about Money 2020, and I attend a few conferences, is that it both has the incumbent view and kind of the disruptor or the startup view, and everyone has a seat and everyone has kind of similar visibility. So you can go to the startup row and see all the newer startups, kind of the super early stage, and then see the more mature stage, and of course the incumbents, the networks, the banks, and the processors, what they are talking about, and everything is in one area, and the content that you curate has all perspectives. And that's really great. I really enjoyed that part. So if we take, and I have a little bias towards startups and disruptors, so if we take that
Sure.
first, let's start with the founder's lens and then get to the incumbents. So what are you seeing in the startup activity this cycle for the show next week or the week after, in terms of overall themes, trends, deal quality, sectors, what's heated and what's not?
Yeah, I think everything you just said is true in terms of, how startups show up. I think there's a really interesting moment we're living in terms of what a startup is anymore, right? I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine that's a VC at Lightspeed recently, so we're going to be unveiling 4 of the most exciting fintech startups, I should say, from our perspective in Vegas. And stay tuned for that I can't unveil right now. But as part of that, right, I go out and I talk with a lot of VC friends, and he was like, here's an interesting one. Sends me a quick link about the fundraise, and it's a $95 million Series A.
Wow.
And I was like, I just asked if you weren't we talking about early stage startups here, right? But because of, as we alluded to before, and you mentioned the, kind of AI wave and all of these kind of like these new technologies and this moment that we're living in, raising $2 million to go build V1 of something is becoming so much more rare, right? But it's still there. And it's actually, I think, some of the more exciting companies like Bridge. I think some people are calling a startup, or, the $1 billion acquisition of Bridge by Stripe. In a lot of ways, they really were a startup. I mean, that was a pretty young company. We have a, I think, very, very promising stablecoin company that's part of that top 4 that I think will be absolutely Bridge size, if not bigger. But at the same time, we're seeing companies that are still trying to solve the creator economy banking problem, right? There's low-hanging fruit that still hasn't, not low-hanging fruit, or, it would have been solved by now. But how do you provide underwriting to, a group of people that have heretofore not been in a position to even think about, what a loan is, right? Things along those lines in terms of like the creator economy, in terms of barbers, in terms of like this next wave of embedded finance, I think is actually going to have a lot of aggregation. And it's going to have a lot of people thinking about what the definition of actual competitive moat is. I think that's the big shift now, because I mean we've hit this generation, like we've completed this generation of open source technology, right? Not completed, I shouldn't say that, actually that's the incorrect phrasing. We have completed the ability to take most things off the shelf and create a financial product pretty quickly. You can grab Plaid, you can grab, all the key things, KYC, IDV, like all the major things you need to start a very basic neobank you can pull off the shelf. So what is the competitive advantage? Like, are we just done building neobanks? I mean, we already have 4,500 banks in the US. I'm seeing some pretty interesting neobanks coming out now, but they're focused in a very specific place, and they've decided that purchasing a payments processor and having that being vertically integrated is going to be their competitive advantage, right? It's just the shift is fascinating because some of the numbers are so big. I mean, people still call Anthropic or OpenAI a startup, right? That's craziness in terms of like the size of these companies. But in terms of age and in terms of how fast things are moving, it's fascinating. I don't know. Yeah. That answer's a little bit all over the place, but honestly, it's because the startup ecosystem is a little bit all over the place, right? We're seeing literally everything from a $2 million seed round to, $100 million idea, like no progress at all. Just a couple founders that said AI and, built the right slide deck and, raising crazy rounds. So it's just a wild time to be alive.
Yeah. That's true. Meaning, I think definition of startups changing and AI is changing kind of some metrics around valuations and that kind of stuff too, instead of seed pricing. So yeah, I think your point's kind of very valid that what is to be a startup, and people are talking about this single or a few people unicorns coming up where AI is doing most of the work. So yeah, it's interesting times in a variety of ways. But the two kind of threads that, or two sectors that you talked about, let's kind of maybe drill down on them a little bit. One was stable coins, and you mentioned the Stripe bridge, but there were other things in the stuff that you're unveiling. So we'll talk about stable coins, but maybe let's cover the embedded finance points you made. So you kind of made a very interesting point that kind of that plumbing, the orchestration, the connectivity, all that's kind of a little bit more stable or ready or mature.
Yeah, ish.
And where things are happening is more perhaps segment specific. So it's not only changing the distribution, because fintech, at least a Gen 1, was all about removing friction, easing the distribution, and making distribution kind of more available to a wider audience and digital experience and stuff. But where you kind of are saying that that's going kind of next level, neobanks, not just a Chime or Revolut, which is for everyone, but right. You may have neobanks or lifestyle applications for a particular segment. And you talked about the 1099 or the kind of the freelancers, which is a big part of the economy now. So is that how, am I reading that right, Zach, in terms of you're seeing embedded finance getting more verticalized, getting more segment specific, or how would you frame it?
Well, I'd say for the most part, I think so. I'd say more segment specific. So let's kind of like unpack the creator economy point a little bit more, right? Because when I say creator economy, where a lot of people's heads go is either DoorDash, Uber, things along those lines, kind of gig economy sort of things. When you think creator economy, your head can go a few different ways. Like we've had OnlyFans at the show before. You could think about YouTube creators. There's a whole gamut there, right? Sure. But those are such different humans, right? In terms of what they are doing day to day, in terms of their financial needs. Like a DoorDash driver or an Uber driver or that group has a very different set of earned wage access needs potentially, right? Like actually being able to, like, right when that ride ends, should that money be in their bank account? That's a very different problem than Mr. Beast, who, is doing $10 million per video, or 10 million views and whatever number of $1 million per video, but is reinvesting literally every dollar of it back into it's bankers aren't used to dealing with these kinds of individuals. You walk into a personal banker at the classical place as Mr. Beast, and you're not quite sure how to have that conversation. It's like, wait, so you just made $150 million on one video and you're going to put $151 million into your next video? Like that doesn't compute for the average, or for anybody. That's part of why he's so successful, I think, as an example. But anyways, the point is, it's a different kind of person, and it's a different kind of underwriting profile. It's a different kind of risk profile. It's a different everything. So the idea that, we've kind of looked at this creator economy thing, and we've lumped in 1099, DoorDash, Instacart, all that into the same thing as Mr. Beast or anywhere in between. Like, that's probably 4 different companies when you, at least when you actually lay that out, like 4 different multi-billion-dollar, highly successful, very important companies.
Right.
But we often kind of just talk about it as this one thing, right? So I think that's where things are starting to get interesting. Like, as fintech has, I think it has matured. I think it has grown up. I think, if anything, it's almost time to find a new term for it, because I think it's going beyond what it started as, and it's starting to solve problems and get involved in portions of the world that I don't think we ever saw coming. And it's a revolution, not an evolution at this point, it seems like.
Yeah. So what would some of those new terms be? What do you think? Where might we see pivots?
I'm going to give you the worst answer ever to that. What I would like fintech's new name to be is financial services. Truly. I think that's what we're like. We've built this area of the Vegas show called the intersection, and it has a stage, networking, and the idea of it is basically the intersection of traditional finance and decentralized finance. And I think it's kind of a physical embodiment of, like, we made it, y'all. Like, for those of us that, like yourself, that have been attending Money 2020 and in the fintech world for, a decade, like, we did it. Like, we're not just having this conversation anymore. We're it, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, Plaid is no longer, something that you have to tell people about. It's like, oh, that's that thing that I use to connect to that thing, right? Like, they still don't know what it is, but they know what it is. Right. And like the where we've gotten to in terms of that, I think that fintech almost has this connotation of lacking compliance, or not having some of the things that I think that fintech does inherently have now, because there was a move fast, break things period of time, and we broke some things, and now we don't break things, and we learned to stop doing that. So I think we have grown up, and I think that I'm gonna still call it fintech because it's more fun, but like I think we are financial services now, and I think we should be really proud of that.
Yeah. No, that's actually very astute. Meaning, it's a good point. Meaning, and fintechs have challenged traditional or incumbent financial institutions to innovate more, and they all have fintech practices have had for the last 10 years. They all come to Money 2020, and maybe that's a good segue, right? We talked about the founders kind of view, but also the incumbent views, and we have to get to stablecoins. Maybe we'll do that after we talk about the incumbent kind of view. So what in the show coming up from an incumbent's perspective? So this is banks, networks, and other larger financial institutions. What do you see kind of some trends breaking out from the areas of interest for them?
Well, the fun part about that question is that I can combine all of it into one. The incumbents want to come talk about stablecoins.
Interesting.
Yeah, not, just stablecoins, but if you were to overgeneralize the idea of stablecoins with tokenization, with the blockchain, with, all of these things, like that is the conversation that these large organizations want to have, right? Because they see the potential of efficiency. They see now that this administration is in place, the friendliness of the regulation involved. And I think these institutions have seen the advantages of this technology for years, but have been afraid to even take a step towards it as a result of the different administration, right? And like, we had Gary Gensler at the show last year. It's a very different world today. And, the economy has yet to fall apart, Mr. Gensler. But, if anything, I think there was a little bit more silliness happening at that point. I mean, we haven't had an FTX since then. But anyways, moving on from that point into, where we are now, this is where the banks, the incumbents, the insurance companies, like, this is what they want to talk about. This and AI, right, are the two things. Because I think last year was that 2024 was kind of the year of the AI remit, I think, from boards, right? It was you have to do something with this. You have to do something with this now, right? And there were some banks JP Morgan has been putting billions of dollars into AI for a decade, right? They've been, they have an R&D budget that is different than others. But for your average regional bank in the US or your, normal, not most gigantic bank in Europe, there was a do something with AI and do it now or else, right? And that led to some silly use cases. That led to just forcing round pegs and square holes. That led to some not awesome things, but it also led to some absolutely groundbreaking outcomes, right? So I think now that some of the silliness and, just natural kind of things falling over as a result of just learning new technologies as a highly regulated industry, we're into that. We're into, okay, these are the use cases. This is how be prepared to come to the show and have big banks surprise you with the depth that they're going to go into and talk about in terms of these technologies, blockchain and AI, and the combination of both. I think that's the other thing that it's hard to, talk about every single interesting piece, but at the end of the day, when you think about the combination of agentic AI, thinking about some of what Visa and MasterCard have done in terms of actually giving cards to some of these AI agents and seeing, what happens in the commerce there. And then thinking about smart contracts, we're on the precipice of this. We could be on the precipice of this idea of self-driving money, right? Where once we get to a point of actually trusting these agents and, we do already trust the blockchain. That is there. I think the key is, do we trust the agents? From there, you basically just need to make sure that you have a power of attorney signed for the agent to go do a thing for you, or that you have enabled the open banking, whatever the regulation is by that point. And then we're all suddenly logical, acting, efficient economic citizens of the world. Is that going to actually happen? I don't know, but could that happen within the next 5 years? Do we have the technology? Yeah. And talk about an exciting time to be in finance. And I think the big shift is, it's not just startups talking about that kind of stuff anymore. It really is the biggest CEOs of the biggest banks in the world. And it's refreshing, exciting, and why I say we're here, we made it, and let's write the next chapter.
Yeah. No, that's big. Meaning, it's like you say, it's just not the startups innovating. There's a lot of incumbent activity, and you can call it innovation, but modernization, or whatever the term is. And there is infrastructure. It looks like there's a lot of infrastructure work, right? The stablecoins aspect, people are building, and stablecoins to me, Zach, is almost a new rail. And obviously, the rail can yield interesting use cases on top, and maybe we should talk a little bit on some of the use cases you are seeing, or the show is going to kind of highlight next week or the week after. But the AI point is interesting, and I did see something on LinkedIn today about Visa kind of creating, with this ecosystem of partners like Cloudflare and stuff, like a trust frameworks, how agents can be trusted when they make a decision using, say, a Visa card and so on and so forth. And it looks like banks and networks, obviously, but others are already kind of thinking through all those things and how agentic commerce and those will take off, and kind of the protocols for those to happen. It looks like the show is going to highlight some of that.
I think it's gonna. Absolutely, yes. I think it's gonna also shake out. It's gonna shake out where we really are, I think, in terms of the stablecoin conversation, and it's one of the things I'm most curious about, because when I start, the thing that makes me most nervous is the fact that I cannot get a single person to go on record saying a single negative thing about stablecoins. I can't find other than, well, if interest rates fall, that's going to have a, negative impact on Circle's revenue. That's all we got. there has to be more risk to there has to be some more downside. There has to there is nothing this perfect, right?
Right.
Or is there? I don't know. We really are living in a new paradigm. So I think we'll cover a multitude of use cases. We'll cover, the commerce side. We'll cover kind of every angle of the stablecoin, if you will, to take that metaphor, I guess. But more than anything, I think it's going to shake out really where we are with it, because I think stablecoins, more than anywhere else, there are quiet giants right now, and especially in startup land, quote unquote startup land, right? I think there's some companies out there that are sitting on treasury sums that we would be shocked by after having raised not anything, basically, right? Or being like a self-funded previous founder or whatever that thing might be. Like there's some sleeping giants out there, and I think a good number of them are in that stablecoin area. And I think a number of them are going to come out of stealth, or maybe force themselves out of stealth as a result of just being in Money 2020 and becoming part of the conversation, and people realizing, oh, I thought you were, oh, okay, let's start this partnership conversation. Let's do that, because companies that you would not think should be getting meetings with a BNY Mellon or someone, as an example, they are. And that is not a thing we've seen in fintech paradigm past, right? So I'm excited to see what shakes out. And other than knowing that some of these companies are presenting a lot smaller than they are, I don't know. I'm excited to see.
Yeah. So if you're a banker listening to this, or even a fintech startup, or just someone in the industry, and haven't decided that you're going to be in Money 2020 this year, this is a good reason. Meaning Zach's talking about not just kind of the innovation angles of stablecoin, it'll shake out where we are, what are potential risks, and is it just something without any downside, which never is the case. So this is interesting information that you can get. So book your tickets if you haven't yet. The show is 26th. I think starts on Sunday the 26th.
Yep.
No, that's great, Zach. And I have been involved in stablecoins for some time, because I invested in Figure, my Cagney's company, which just went IPO like a month ago.
Congrats, sir. Congrats.
Oh, a small investment, but still I can call myself
a successful angel investment is not something to shake a stick at. Congrats. That's
thanks. And he's doing really well, meaning Figure is doing really well. And they were talking about stablecoin before anyone else was. So I think kudos to them, and good recognition. But now it's more mainstream. I see a lot of remittances use cases. And of course, I think you have Congressman Flood, and I don't know what he's going to talk about, and maybe the Genius Act, or what's next. Or can you tell me a little bit about that? I know the Gensler-induced crypto winter, and what's this year is going to be very different vibe. But tell us what you can preview from the regulator or even legislators' perspective.
Yeah, I mean, what a difference a day makes, what an absolute difference a year makes, I guess. Talk about a shift in the winds, indeed. Yes, we do have Congressman Flood will be in attendance. What if you've seen Congressman Flood speak, you know that I can't speak for him. Who knows? It could go a lot of different directions. I mean, he is a dynamic individual that will definitely tell you how he feels. So I'm excited to see what he says. I think he will definitely talk about the Genius Act. I think, a lot of the work the administration has done to deregulate and to stimulate the economy, whatever your opinion is on that being, short-term in nature or long-term in nature, it's a conversation, and it's an important one, right? So we're going to delve into that. What he's going to say, like I said, who knows? I had no idea what Gary Gensler was going to say last year either. We generally have absolutely no clue. I think my favorite quote in the history of Money 2020 regulators was last year's Sunday Night Live, which is like our big kind of like kickoff,
right,
keynote event. This year that will be featuring the Money Awards as well. We just rolled out awards as well, so it's going to be a fun one. This was right after JP Morgan they rolled out 1033. Like this all happened within like 24 hours. They rolled out 1033. JP Morgan sued them immediately. And Mr. Chopra, I don't feel like I know him well enough to call him Rohit. Mr. Chopra's quote was that something along, like, he was asked about the lawsuit and he just said, I don't think they read the lawsuit. or I don't think they read the regulation. I'm sorry.
I remember this.
Yeah. I mean, that moment, like, it was, 2,000 people sitting there crammed wall to wall with, like, I have the fire marshal in one ear. I'm trying to listen to the CFPB director out of the other. And I'm like, did he just say that? Oh, yeah. Yes, you can open that door too. It's like, so what they're going to say, you really never know. But it's always interesting. So yeah, Congressman Flood will be there, and we'll have a number of interesting regulatory conversations. One that I would highlight that actually is on the opposite end a little bit, and something that we but like a conversation we don't lean into as often is actual cryptocurrency prices, right? And cryptocurrency itself. Like, we have stayed away from conversations much about Bitcoin or crypto or like Ethereum specific or anything along those lines, other than, like, if Vitalik comes, like, we talk a little bit about Ethereum, right? But for the most part, like, we've stayed away from anything where there would be price prognostication or anything like that. But this year we have Michael Saylor coming. Like, we're going to talk some Bitcoin prices, right? We're going to talk some Ethereum prices. We're going to talk some macroeconomy. I mean, it's not a thing that we normally lean into because it is, kind of a passing fancy, right? Like, as soon as you start talking stock prices, even, like, the actual impact there shifts a little bit. But I think we're living in a time where, I remember my first year doing this job, we had Serena Williams, right? And the level of, like, excitement around Serena was so significant. You could just feel it in the room. Mm-hmm. And I'd be willing to, it might not be 5,000 people in that exact room, because I don't think that we can fit more than two we're not going to be able to fit as many people in the room where Michael Saylor will be, which might be a problem. But, like, I think that same level of excitement and, like, like, Michael Saylor at Money20, like, this is, to some degree a traditional finance event, right? Like, this is a big moment. So I think things like that it's going to be exciting to see what people say. That's the other fun part of the job, right? Is you get to curate to some degree, push some directions, but at the end of the day, you have no idea what anyone's going to say.
Yeah. And the point we talked about, right? You're shaping the conversations, you're shaping the narrative, you're shaping the future, you're sculpting the future. So in some sense, what you just talked about, both TradFi and DeFi, and you're having kind of the DeFi, like Saylor as one of the prominent guys for not just kind of the stablecoin part of crypto, but kind of the Bitcoin and in treasury and that kind of stuff of DeFi. So are the lines blurring, right? Is that the hint that we take from here, that the TradFi and DeFi lines are blurring?
I don't think they're even blurring. I think they're meeting. That's that intersection stage that I alluded to before. Like, in the past, we've tried to build stages that have been focused on specific topics, and, embedded finance, banking as a service, like, and it's a long enough show and a big enough show that at some point you don't hit a bottom of a barrel, but you kind of have had the conversation, like there's only so many aspects of KYC that we can dig into at a certain point. But when it comes to the intersection of TradFi and DeFi, and when it comes to the blurring lines or the meeting lines, or, like, however you want to describe it, like this is, again, it's a revolution, not an evolution. Like this is such a sudden shift with technology that is like been proven but not been approved, right? And now that it's been approved, like, you know, this is the moment that we're going to see some wild stuff happen. And then, you know, again, you throw AI on top of that, because AI is just going to end up being one of those things that's going to come up in every conversation, right? And that's why we don't look at it as a vertical. We look at it as a horizontal. We actually now, I would say, pretty much look at blockchain and DeFi as a horizontal as well. Like it's going to come up in most conversations because suddenly it's approved, right? Like it is that moment. So again, who knows what exactly will be said. But I will say this is one stage that we built with no issue filling on one specific topic. It is absolutely jam-packed, and I like wish that there was an extra day for us to be able to even put more on there. Honestly, it's really, really unbelievable to see the like how much it's still competition, but it's very much become coopetition. And to see some of the groups that are now like wanting to speak together or be seen together, or just don't hate each other. Like this is, you know, it's truly groundbreaking. So I think, you know, if you're at the show, when you're at the show, definitely go check out the intersection stage.
Oh, there's an intersection stage kind of the along the lines of TradFi and DeFi.
Yeah. The whole thing is focused on that for that. Well, when the show floor is open, I guess it's 3 days, but even on Sunday, we'll be talking about it a lot as well.
Yeah. And I hear a lot of talk, and I did review some agenda items around this kind of tokenization of real world assets and that kind of stuff, and how that impacts liquidity or just kind of, it's kind of the future of finance.
Yeah.
And that's why it's not DeFi finance or TradFi finance. It's just the future of finance. So no, that's the intersection stage. That's where we need to be to kind of look into the future of finance.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're a community banker, regional banker, if you're at the point of, I mean, some of these conversations are going to be very deep, but I would say, you know, take a look at the agenda, and especially if you're at the, like, what do we want to do with stablecoins, like 101 level, or do we want to do any, like, you know, if you're even asking yourself the question of, you know, if you want to take a step into this world, and where you would start, like, review that agenda, because it absolutely has the 101, it has the 201, and it's going to have some, you know, some depth of some 301 and whatnot, as well. But there's one or two problems, I'd say, every year that people come focused on. Or you phrase them as problems, phrase them as opportunities, whatever. I personally believe it is, especially in banking, often motivated by fear. I think understanding AI was motivated by fear. I think understanding, you know, this new blockchain stuff, right, that's not new at all, is going to be for many motivated by fear. And if fear of missing out is the thing that actually, you know, gets us to a better place as an industry, then fine, you know. But I think that's where we're at now. Is you can't be on the sidelines anymore. So if you're thinking about taking the step, go do some listening, and go do some talking to some of those people that are on those stages.
Yeah, and Zach, I can see a lot of work has gone into the content curation that we started talking about, right? So you're demystifying, right? Meaning even innovation and disruptions, we traditionally think in terms of silos. Oh, how's blockchain? Oh, how's stablecoin going to change life? But you've kind of integrated and demystified, and that's kind of your stage, the intersection stage. So for bankers who are kind of saying, okay, what should I do with stablecoins? What should I do with AI? Meaning they can get good answers by attending your show, and you've kind of curated it more as a future of finance. And like you said, fintech is financial services, so it's relevant for everyone, and it's kind of boiled down. and to our point earlier, it kind of shapes the dialogue as well, not just kind of rear view mirror, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say also the fun part about some of it has been that this revolution thing has forced some of these groups to just be okay talking with each other. There were times even a couple of years ago that I would say to, X company, we'd love to have you on a panel with Y company. And instead of taking the opportunity to get on the Money 2020 stage, which is, people work very hard to do and is a big moment for really anyone, they opt out of it because they don't either want to be sitting there with a competitor or they don't want to, whatever that might be. And whether they may all the way want to or not, they now are. And that is going to force, I think, some really interesting conversations because we're at a point where if you're not part of the conversation, it's a slippery slope to just being left out for a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. I want to shift gears to AI. I know we touched on it a little bit, but kind of maybe drill down a little bit on AI. But before that, do you want to name names? I know we talked about Congressman Flood. We talked about Michael Saylor. Any other big names that?
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely. I mean, if you force me to, name drop, I suppose I will. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Sunday Night Live, we talked about it before. Max Levchin, you might have heard of him. He'll be there. That's a conversation I'm really excited for.
PayPal Mafia, but now Affirm.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So, and I mean, I think one of the most interesting parts about Max that I do hope we get a chance to get into is, in between some of those, billion-dollar fintech outcomes, he's tried to do other things, right? Like he actually tried to start a fertility company, I believe, at one point.
Interesting.
Before Affirm, which leads me to believe that he's a rational individual. Mm-hmm. He built, after building PayPal, probably one of the hardest companies that's ever been built. And, dealing with everything that was that hyperscale and regulation and everything else. Like he tried to get out of fintech and go, do something that, benefits the world, but is not that maybe quite as hard. And he's back. So, I would love to understand why, right? Like that there's just talk about a fascinating human that has shaped not just our industry, but the world. And speaking of which, the other kind of big keynote speaker that we can name, because again, the Money Awards are happening and can't name those folks yet, is Jennifer Bailey, who runs Apple Pay, right? And we're, I believe 10 years into, that tap to pay moment. So from one of the co-founders of PayPal to the person that has been responsible for, the biggest digital wallet or the most, prolific digital wallet, at least in the Western world. Right. I mean, there's two, and there's a lot more. But I would say, if there's a moment not to miss, it's definitely Sunday Night Live and the Money Awards. That's going to be exciting.
I'll be there, and if you're listening and be there, look us up. Definitely look Zach up and look me up. And no, indeed, and it's kudos. I know Apple has come to Money 2020 before. Apple has this thing that they don't go much to events, they don't advertise, they kind of do their own thing.
Yep.
It's kudos to the Money 2020 brand that you can get Apple and someone like Jennifer Bailey to come and keynote. So that's great. Meaning it shows kind of the brand you built for the industry.
First, thank you. I agree. I think, the power of the brand is impressive, but I also think it says something about the power of fintech to me, right? Like the fact that we as an industry, from naming the Plaids to the Stripes to like just the industry as a whole, has done this thing that is so impressive and has proven its staying power to the point that Apple reached out to us to come give us updates after 10 years of Apple Pay, right? Oh. And I mean, that's, again, like, yes, Money 2020 is an amazing brand. And like, I again, never thought I would work in events, and this is the only event I would ever work at. But like, to me, the kudos goes to the founders, to the industry, to the people, to the people sitting in that audience that Jennifer will be talking to. That's, to me, is the thing that blows my mind about it the most.
Yeah. Cool. Shifting gears to AI, I know we talked a little bit about that kind of the trust, establishing the trust, and talked about what networks or Visa and MasterCard are doing. I think that's in the agenda as well. But broadly, agentic banking, agentic commerce, service industry disruption, and how that monetization and the payments work there, those are all kind of game for fintech conversations or Money 2020 conversations. But where do you see in the show coming up, where is AI playing a role?
So I think what the most interesting evolution that I've seen, so NVIDIA was like really one of our biggest kind of first AI entrance into like the Money 2020 conversation, right? NVIDIA, and then we had Databricks joined, and then like the thing started rolling. And then last year we had the CFO of OpenAI, Sarah Fryer, and then we had Daniela Amode from Anthropic, and all of the companies I just named are coming back, right? Oh. It's not those exact people, right, that spoke before, because that's generally not how we do things. But they're all coming back. But the most interesting conversations in AI, I think, are actually happening at that integration level now, right? Like, it's actually the banker or the number of chief product officers, right? Like, one good example, and one that I think is going to be a great conversation, is Mike Krieger, the chief product officer of Anthropic. He was the co-founder of Instagram, right? What? It's craziness. And for thinking about that's a UX conversation. Like, we're having a UX conversation as one of the bigger keynotes at Money 2020. Like, we're living in a different time. I mean, the form factor is likely going to change. Whatever Johnny Ive and Sam Altman are working on at OpenAI, we don't know. Maybe it's a necklace, maybe it's glasses. Like, I don't know. But like, it's probably going to get rid of this thing faster than we think, right? So I think from the like real perspective of where unique conversation is happening, like, I'm really excited to hear what Mike has to say. Obviously, like, I mean, even if he wasn't the chief product officer of Anthropic, that's just absolutely fascinating. But thinking about people like Brett Taylor from Sierra, right? He's another example of, I mean, I wish I could pull up his actual CV right now, but I mean, he's been on the Twitter, on the board of Twitter. Exactly. Yeah. He's like basically one of the early Facebook. I mean,
even he invented OpenAI board.
Yeah. Yeah. He's on he's the chairman of the OpenAI board.
Oh, I think
Okay. Yeah. He invented that's what I was trying. He invented the like button. Like, that's, and now we're talking about wild people, and he's now just starting another startup, or not just, it's, Taylor, but he's just starting another startup, and it's, just happens to be in the AI space and has some financial use cases, and like,
interesting.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating to see how some of the there's a really kind of, it feels like a slow creep, but I think it's going to happen really fast, where a lot of that kind of consumer B2C facing past founder is going to find themselves more in this world, just based on the potential of what you can do with some of these technologies in highly regulated industries, and like the challenge of creating that new UX, but keeping it compliant. Like, that's fun.
Yeah, you made a very interesting point. There's obviously a lot of emphasis on design, like the Sir Ivy or Johnny Ivy at OpenAI, and Mike Krieger, Anthropic. He's an Instagram guy, a product and UX guy. Like, you made that very good connection. And I think the next step, obviously there's a lot of AI discussion in the chip, the NVIDIA and energy requirements and the nuclear fission, all that's happening, that's there. but at the application level, it's at the UX and how we get into AI or how we interact with AI. And you flashed your mobile phone and how that could potentially replace, right? And I kind of talk about this Cambrian explosion, right? So there'll be a proliferation of agents, AI agents doing all sorts of things for us personally, for businesses, and so on and so forth. But how would we access those agents through our phones or through our web browsers, or that's still TBD, or that's
Right.
where we are. And that seems to be interesting from a fintech or financial services perspective. And I think you touched on that, and looks like that's getting framed in a week at Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that's interesting about it is, I think for a portion of time with like Robinhood as an example, like Robinhood benefited or benefits every time you log in, because you're probably going to place a trade, right? And that like sell order flow, like make money, like just you're kind of this gamifying thing has been the UX thing, right? And we've seen that as success, I think, in some ways, very much not in others, but it's made it more approachable. And I think what's going to be interesting with the agents, to your point, is, whatever that form factor is, and no, we don't know, how often are we going to have to check them? Will we actually check them? Like, will we, need to access them? Ideally, I would have an AI agent running my 401k that is, paying attention to, or takes a certain amount of feedback from me and understands, my general risk appetite, which maybe some 401k providers would say they already do by asking a few questions. But for the most part, no. Like, most people are either in 4 different target date funds that are incorrect, or, they're just sitting in cash and missing out on an unbelievable amount. Like, there's so many things that these agents could do. But like, one aspect of it, I think, that's going to be interesting is how much of it is just set it and forget it, but with this new level of trust.
Yeah. So you're almost painting the picture of autonomous finance, Zach.
Hopefully.
And with humans in the loop where required. So
yeah.
And that's wild. And I think Money 2020, as we've said, it not only tells what's happening, it sculpts what's happening in the future. So what Mike Krieger is doing at Anthropic, and what Johnny Ive's doing at OpenAI, or Sir Johnny Ive, it's will be influenced by some of these conversations that are going to happen in Vegas at Money 2020.
I think so. Yeah, one of my favorite memories will forever be standing and realizing on a Sunday at Money 2020 that like 4 people to my right watching content that I had programmed was the acting comptroller of the currency, Michael Saylor. This was probably like 3 years ago, right? So yeah, I'm incredibly excited to hear what all of these people have to say. I'm always so curious what they hear, because Michael Saylor was literally standing there with a notepad, like, and was like attending content like all day, right? Wow. And I think anyone at that level, if they can maintain that level of humility to continue to learn, and know that they can get that learning anywhere, especially if you're at Money 2020, I wonder what, Mike Krieger walks away with that he didn't have before,
Right.
And I'll probably never know the answer to that, but I always am curious.
Yeah, no, it's always true, I think, and the conversation shape, the question answers, but there's a humongous networking that happens at Money 2020. So I'm sure the speakers learn as much as they divulge or teach the audience.
We hope so.
Yes. And this was Zach. This was great. I really loved it, and we kind of gave a sneak preview, if you will, of what's coming in the show. But the show speaks for itself. So if you're on the fence, now's the time to book that ticket.
Get off that fence.
That fence. It's a great experience, and if you're a startup, and we kind of set this in earlier that it's not that the lines are blurring, early stage, late stage. So if you're a startup anytime, this is the place to be. Whether you are in the stablecoin, the blockchain, the crypto world, whether you are in the AI agentic application world, shaping new experiences, building trust layers, you got to be at Money 2020 in Vegas, October 26th, starting Sunday, October 26th.
You got to be there. And thank you for having me, Patty. This has been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Sure. Thank you. And we'll link agenda and the tracks on the show notes. Zach, on a personal level, where can people reach out? What social media are you more active? X, LinkedIn, or where can people reach you?
Both. Yeah. LinkedIn, just Zach Anderson Pettet. Give me a holler. Love to hear from you if you're interested in, speaking or whatever it might be, or you're a startup and I like helping startups. Reach out on LinkedIn. Also at Zach Pettet on Twitter. Just give me a shout. And this is maybe my less responsive time of year, but I'll get back to you as fast as I can.
Sounds good. And where are you normally based? You're in the Midwest, or
I'm in the center of innovation, Kansas City. Yeah, okay. But it's mostly the team's mostly based in New York, so that's where most of the kind of deep layer planning happens. But yeah, a few of us are still living that distributed lifestyle.
Yeah, I know the lead bank there, and they're in Kansas City, and they're doing some cool stuff. So you're not too far off that Kansas City is the center of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, I joke, but I actually do. It's not the center, but there's between Jackie Reese's and buying lead bank and the group of investors in that being unbelievable. Some of the partners they have, like NBKC Bank is here, who's one of the major partner banks. C2FO, a company that probably a lot of people haven't heard of, but it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I love this city, and it actually is the center of a lot of really interesting technology, and people just love to hate us because of the Chiefs now. But other than that, we're doing all right.
I know they're rivals to the Raiders. The Raiders were here, but now they're in Vegas. They're big rivals, and still are, I think. I don't think that's ending. Well, thanks, Zach, for being on the FinTech Talk Show. Listeners, if you enjoyed this preview, share it with a founder or an operator who's wheels up to Vegas. I'll be there, and I'll see you there on the floor.
Thank you, Patty.